Hello and welcome. As Jason from Engineering Explained would say, but I'm not going to make that my tagline. Tonight, we are working on my 2004 Subaru Outback. What's wrong? It's got a blown transmission. It seems that one of the gear bearings is deteriorated and feels kind of like the bearing material has jammed up between the gear teeth. So we are taking it out, take it to my lovely Subaru mechanic who rebuilds transmissions. But this is going to be a multi-part video set for doing various things to get to that point. So, jump right in. First thing we're going to cover is exhaust removal. There's a lot of reasons to remove your exhaust. And one would be replacing your exhaust, one would be getting to the drive shaft. So for any reason you're removing your exhaust, first piece you're going to take off is going to be the end piece here. This is before the muffler and after the cat. Sits in the car like this. Like that. And so if you went up under the car, you would see you've got two spring bolts here to the back of the cat pipe. You've got two bolts and nuts back here. Now, the fun part with these is, if I can find my bits, this is how one of them had to come off. Had to cut it off with grinder, and the other one ended up being the same way. I've got bits around here somewhere of it. But that's what happens to exhaust when it's 15, 16 years old. So, that was the back end. Cut the bolts and the nuts off with a grinder. They were completely seized. I tried using 3 different types of stripped nut and bolt extractors, none of which worked. So, that kind of sucked. For reference, these guys are 12 millimeter, if I remember correctly. Oh no, these were the funky ones. The nut is 13 millimeter, the bolt head is 14 millimeter. And then up here on the front, we've got our spring bolts. These are spring bolts to allow the exhaust to flex when the engine kicks during acceleration. And so you'll have, I believe these are factory set, so they were installed like so, through the flange of the cat pipe, and then into here, and then there was the nut on this side. This is a 12 millimeter nut, 14 millimeter bolt. You're going to want to grab yourself, I found it easier to use a 12 millimeter wrench and a 12 millimeter specialty wrench and a 14 millimeter standard wrench. So I had my 14 mil, pulled my spring bolt, and then took my 12 and twisted it, otherwise they'll just spin. They might spin. These ones are seized. As you can see, one of them just snapped under the process of trying to get it off. And so when I say specialty wrench, I mean my nice and expensive expense to work set of wrenches. These little guys, 12-point wrench head, 3/8 drive, lets you get a little more torque with a 3/8 wrench, step it up to a half with an adapter. So this made it easy to get up in there, crank it down. Just use a socket and a ratchet. There's not a lot of room in here though for a socket and a ratchet unless you have one of those low profile pass-through ratchets. So this made it really easy. You could also just do it with a 14 mil wrench and a standard 12 mil wrench. That'll get the job done. If they're super seized, you're going to have to be going for cutting them off again because that's how exhaust bits go. Sometimes they just don't want to come apart without snapping and being cut off. So I'll drop this guy. There's nothing else holding him on. There's no bungee brackets like a lot of cars have to let the exhaust bounce and not shake on the car. So I'm done with that. So we will go under the car where the header is sitting. So if you're just going for the drive shaft, dropping that pipe will give you access to the drive shaft down the length of the car. But I am going for transmission removal. Also, if you're going for, replacing the exhaust system or anything like that, you're going to want to be taking off the header too. So there is my header. It was way easier to take the header off as a whole than try and disconnect the cat pipe from it, because this mofo right here, 14 mil nut, 14 mil bolt, is tucked right up under the fucking oil pan, and there's pretty much no way to really easily access it without trying to get the heat shield off around the cat, which proved to be impossible without cutting all of the nuts off of the heat shield. I didn't feel like laying under my car grinding for, 20-30 minutes cutting each one of these off. So I just came up under the engine, right, and you may notice my engine is covered in a layer of grime on the bottom side. That would be because she's got little head gaskets as well. So, there is our exhaust head flange. Gasket still on there. We've got 1, 2, 3 14 mil nuts that hold these on each side. So there's that one. And that just made it really easy to drop it down. Popped all those off. I use an impact. It's much faster than doing it with a wrench, but if you got a wrench, you got a wrench or a ratchet. And then down here, when that is still installed, you'll see that it's got a 14 mil bolt right there. This is designed very nicely that when you undo this bolt right here, this little lip will catch the flange on the hanger and it'll actually hold it up instead of just dropping it on you, which is really nice. And there you go. You pretty much have all of your exhaust removed. All that's left is the muffler, which I'm not working on at this point. This is just to get towards the front of the engine. There you go. If you're doing a catback system or a full header, catless pipe, catback, all that, this is a pretty standard walkthrough for essentially any of the Subaru engines from 2000 to, I want to say 2010. They're all pretty much the same on the bottom side until they change the engine designs. It will be different for the turbo engines. This really only applies to the naturally aspirated engines. This may be the 2.5, but all this walkthrough will still apply almost identically to the 2.2 engines and the 2-liter engines. So that is the entirety of taking off your exhaust. I didn't go through the process to getting the car up here. If you don't know how to jack up and sport your car, it's pretty straightforward. Find some other videos for it. One thing that I did miss is the O2 sensors. You have your primary O2. Right there is your primary O2. There's your secondary. Someone has already done a step-out bung on the secondary O2 on this to not kick the cell for a non-functioning cat. So I removed that one. I didn't need to. It was actually easier to here. Here is the secondary O2 plug right up behind the axle of the passenger side. You just undo the clip, and that guy is also held on right there by one of those little plastic wedge clips. You can go up to the top with some pliers and squeeze it, and it should come out. I was a little upset at that point and just kind of ripped it off. I'm replacing all the O2s and all that anyways. So that gets that one off. The primary O2, where's that cord? Primary O2 was easier to disconnect from the top. If you follow the wire up into the engine bay, it'll be on the passenger side, just down below your air box. If you can see that right there is the bottom side of my air box. There is a clip hanging out there somewhere where I disconnected my primary O2. And so that is pretty much it on getting the exhaust off. Or if for any reason you need to replace your O2 sensors, this is actually the easiest way to do it, by just dropping the header itself. Trying to get in here and do just the O2 replacement on this setup of exhaust and engine design, it is extremely hard to fit tools in there and get it out. So really just undoing those 3 nuts each side and dropping the header down to get more access. You'll need to get new exhaust header gaskets to put back on there. You can't reuse them, but they're pretty cheap, pretty easy to come by. and that will replace your O2. You would need to replace your O2 if you're throwing a cell for heater element on an O2. There's a few other cells it'll throw for the primary O2. Secondary O2 really only throws the cell for insufficient catalyst conversion, and that would either be looking at something wrong with your cat itself or possibly the O2 has fouled out. But I'm going to wrap this up. It's kind of a long video now. That's how you do the exhaust drop on this 2004 Subaru Outback, generation of 2000-2004. Applies to all the Outbacks from 2000 to 2009. Naturally aspirated, not turbo. Same for the Foresters. And very identical to the Imprezas and in the Legacies. Yeah, the Legacies are about the same thing too. Drop me a comment, questions, anything like that. This video series is going to continue with some other miscellaneous parts coming out. Thanks for watching. Subscribe, like, all that fun stuff on YouTube.